Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Women Paracharya, coming up in the next hour. 2 Iranian soldiers killed in Israel's retaliatory airstrikes on Tehran. Iran says it is entitled and obligated to defend itself. Calls grow for restraint. India says ongoing hostilities are to nobody's benefit. Race for White House heads into the last stretch. Democratic candidate Kamala Harris gets a celebrity bump as she campaigns with Beyoncé. Trump campaigns in Michigan. India slams Pakistan at the United Nations over deplorable condition of its women from minority communities. Team India win bronze to end its campaign at Sultan of Johor Cup, beat New Zealand in a thrilling shootout. In the final week leading up to the U.S. presidential election, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris rallied in Texas on Friday, a conservative state that was the first to implement a near-total abortion ban. Harris spoke about the danger that former President Trump and Republicans could present to abortion rights across the country if he is elected.
Texas, what is happening across this state and our country is a healthcare crisis. And Donald Trump is the architect of it. He brags about overturning Roe v. Wade. In his own words, quote, "I did it and I'm proud to have done it." That's what he says. And one has to ask, proud that women are dying? Proud that doctors and nurses could be thrown in prison for life for administering life-saving care?
Meanwhile, former U.S. President and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump criticized Kamala Harris at a campaign rally in Michigan on Friday.
Got a little dose of incompetent people. You know where she is tonight? She's out partying. So Israel is attacking. We got a war going on and she's out partying. At least we're working to make America great again. That's what we're doing.
With high-profile celebrities backing both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, the U.S. presidential election race has taken a star-studded twist. From social media shout-outs to rally appearances, America's biggest names are making the voices heard. But how are these endorsements shaping the election? Find out in our next report. When billionaire Elon Musk to pop icons like Beyoncé and Taylor Swift all jump into the campaign trail, you know the stakes for the upcoming US presidential race couldn't be higher. As the election heats up, some of America's biggest celebrities are taking center stage.
Welcome to the next President of the United States, Vice President Kamala Harris.
For Kamala Harris, it's a wave of Hollywood icons lighting up her campaign. When Beyoncé graced Harris's rally at Houston's Shell Energy Stadium on Friday, the Grammy-winning singer called on Americans to sing a new song.
Add your voice to the new American song. I'm not here as a celebrity. I'm not here as a politician. I'm here as a mother. A mother who cares deeply about the world my children and all of our children live in. A world where we have the freedom to control our bodies.
Taylor Swift broke the internet as well as her silence on politics when she endorsed Kamala Harris on Instagram with a touch of her classic humor, signing her post as childless cat lady, a jab at comments made by Trump's running mate. Rapper Eminem came out to support Harris this week at a campaign rally in Detroit, urging people to get out and vote.
So I'm encouraging everybody to get out and vote, please.
He was followed on stage by former President Barack Obama.
I think Vice President Harris supports a future for this country where these freedoms and many others will be protected and upheld.
Rock legend Bruce Springsteen joined Harris's supporters in Atlanta, telling the crowd he's backing a president who reveres the Constitution.
Thank you.
On the other side, Donald Trump has solidified support from the world's richest man, Elon Musk. His backing amplifies Trump's Make America Great Again message.
You know, the true test of someone's character is how they behave under fire. And we had one president who couldn't climb a flight of stairs, and another who was fist pumping after getting shot.
Country stars Jason Aldean and Lee Greenwood have also performed at Trump's rallies. But will celebratory endorsement make any difference on election day? Let's see what experts say.
There is what I call creative Hollywood, which most of us think of the movie stars, the famous directors, maybe a few famous writers. And they're the ones we usually think of for money. They're not giving the biggest money. The biggest money comes from corporate Hollywood.
With the presidential election just days away on the 5th of November, both candidates are pulling out all stops to win over voters. Whether these high-profile endorsements will make the difference remains to be seen. Nupur Parveen's report from Delhi for DD India. Strikes on Iran early on Saturday in retaliation to an earlier Iranian attack. The strikes, however, did not target the country's critical oil and nuclear sites. This reflects caution after urgent calls for restraint from allies and neighboring nations. The escalation adds to the already volatile situation in West Asia. DD India's Mihir Maikuri has more.
The early hours of Saturday saw waves of Israeli fighter jets streaking through the skies above Iran. The military strikes aimed at missile factories and other strategic sites come amid heightened regional tensions. Israeli military reported completing 3 waves of strikes before dawn, warning Iran not to retaliate.
We conducted targeted and precise strikes on military targets in Iran, thwarting immediate threats to the state of Israel. The Israel Defense Forces has fulfilled its mission. If the regime in Iran were to make the mistake of beginning a new round of escalation, we will be obligated to respond.
In Iran, the immediate aftermath of the attack left 2 soldiers dead. The country claimed its air defenses successfully countered Israeli strikes on military targets in the provinces of Tehran, Khuzestan and Elam, causing limited damage to some locations. The latest escalation stems from a year-long Israel-Hamas conflict that has sharply heightened regional hostilities. More recently, on October 1st, Iran launched 200 ballistic missiles at Israel, resulting in 1 casualty in the West Bank. With fears of a broader conflict looming, a US official confirmed Israel notified the US before its strikes, but emphasized no American involvement, calling it an attack of self-defense. White House spokesman Sean Savit urged Iran to halt attacks on Israel to prevent further escalation. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer also urged Iran not to respond to Israeli strikes, urging all sides to show restraint.
I am clear that Israel has the right to defend itself against Iranian aggression. I'm equally clear that we need to avoid further regional escalation and urge all sides to show restraint. Iran should not respond.
On the other hand, West Asian countries, including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the United Arab Emirates, and others condemned Israeli strikes. Adding to the complexity, the ongoing conflict in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah has raised temperatures further. Israel has intensified its campaign against Hezbollah by targeting the outfit's infrastructure. Now all eyes are fixed on how Iran responds to Israel in the coming days. Mihir Makri's report for DD India.
Meanwhile, India has expressed deep concern over the evolving escalation in West Asia and has called for exercising restraint. In a statement, India's Ministry of External Affairs said, and I quote, "We are deeply concerned by the evolving escalation in West Asia and its ramifications for peace and stability in the region and beyond. We reiterate our call to all concerned to exercise restraint and return to the path of dialogue and diplomacy. The ongoing hostilities are to nobody's benefit, even as innocent hostages and civilian populations continue to suffer. Our missions in the region are in contact with the Indian community." Joining us, a perspective now is Yashvardhan Sinha, former Indian ambassador. He's joining us. Such a pleasure to have you, Ambassador Sinha. We've seen that hostilities have only escalated in this region, and Iran knows that if it strikes again, then Israel would hit back even harder. Now, after assessing the damage of its military capabilities, do you think that Iran will also weigh the political cost at home and in the region of responding or not before it decides on its next move?
I'm sure they will. Thank you for having me. I think we are at an inflection point in the Middle East. And don't forget that the Middle East is our extended neighborhood, not just geographically, but also we have a very large Indian diaspora working in the Gulf and in the larger Middle East. So I think for us, it's a matter of grave concern. And that is why the statements by the Ministry of External Affairs. But I think what happened last night was expected. Israel was expected to retaliate against the missile. The fact that they waited this long was perhaps to weigh the various consequences. However, I think what is important is that the escalatory ladder is not climbed by either side. Now, Iran, of course, has made statements that they will respond, but we can only hope that that response would be very measured, because the Israeli response coming after almost a month has been focused on or targeted military installations. We don't know the extent of damage that has been done, but the Iranian side concedes that two soldiers have died. However, given what's happened over the last 1 year, over 1 year, on the 7th of October, the terrorist attack by Hamas on Iran, and the escalation ever since, I think one can only hope that saner advice prevails and the matter is contained, the conflagration is contained, so that we do not face the specter of a larger all-out war.
Ambassador, talking of the U.S. Role, then the U.S. has put out a message that it was not involved in this attack on Iran, but having deployed around 100 military personnel to Israel to crew its THAAD air defense system, the U.S. may now find itself involved in helping to defend Israel against any possible Iranian retaliation in future. Now, the U.S., we know, has military bases up and down the Arabian side of the Gulf. The U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet operates out of a strategic port in Bahrain. So what could be the potential U.S. role going forward?
I think the U.S. would actually be caught in a rather awkward moment because, as you're aware, they're on the cusp of going in for a very crucial presidential elections. In fact, I think this will become a part of the rhetoric during the election campaign in the United States. However, it's very clear that the United States is firmly behind Israel, irrespective of which party or which candidate. The difference will probably be in nuances, but they're certainly firmly behind Israel. And that is why it is important that this conflict is contained and is not allowed to escalate. Nobody wants a spread of this conflict involving extra-regional powers, and of course, the consequences could be very grave.
Also, Ambassador, talking of the Gulf Arab states, these governments have recently told Iran that they would not allow their countries to be used in an Israeli attack on the Islamic Republic. Memories in Saudi Arabia are still raw of how easily an Iran-backed militia in Iraq was able to inflict severe damage on its petrochemical installations, and that was in a single drone and missile attack in 2019. So do these Gulf Arab states prefer a hands-off approach?
That's an interesting question because I've served in Riyadh and I've handled the division that looked after Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran later. So I'm aware of the issues involved on both sides. And I think without going into history, really, I think the issue here is very clear. The statements made, I think the official statements made by the Arab Gulf states is basically condemning the Israeli attack. However, the schism between Iran and the rest of the Arab Gulf states, except perhaps the Houthis in Yemen, is quite clear. So I think while they would certainly condemn an attack by Israel on Iran, at least initially, what has happened last night, and of course support the Palestinian cause, which of course is a cause that is supported by a large number of countries, including India. However, I think
we've lost contact, it seems, with former Indian ambassador. He said that he's served in Riyadh and was talking of how the Gulf Arab states, particularly Saudi Arabia, would like a hands-off approach as far as the West Asia tensions are concerned. We know that Saudi Arabia is also has rolled out, in fact, socio-economic reforms, is looking at a post-oil future, so would not want to get into these geopolitical entanglements. But if you are there with us, Ambassador, please go ahead. Right, so we'll leave it at that. So that was a discussion on the evolving situation in West Asia, wherein Israel has now attacked Iran. Time for us to take a breather. Coming up next on DD India News are South Korea and Poland agree to bolster defense cooperation. Japanese political parties hold rallies ahead of Sunday's House of Representatives election.
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India. You're watching DD India News Hour with me, Munmun Bhattacharya. Georgians voted on Saturday to decide whether to end 12 years of increasingly authoritarian rule in an election that will decide their future path towards the European Union. While many Georgian voters are seeking change, the election is being depicted by both sides as an existential battle. Here's a report.
Voted on Saturday in elections that will determine the fledgling democracy's European aspirations amid growing concerns the ruling party is drifting towards Russia. The election is depicted by both sides as an existential battle that will determine whether the country integrates closely with the West or leans back towards Moscow.
Tonight, there will be a victory, and that victory will be that of Georgia, of all of Georgia. There will be people that will be victorious, but nobody will lose tonight.
This is a highly principled, decisive election, a referendum akin to the pivotal 2012 elections. where the direction of our country's development must be determined once and for all. This is a referendum between war and peace, between immoral propaganda and traditional values, between our past and a brighter future for our country.
The parliamentary election pits an unprecedented union of pro-Western opposition forces against the ruling Georgian dream, who are accused of stifling democracy and pivoting towards Moscow.
The choice is very simple to make. Either we choose a government that will serve you, the Georgian people, the Georgian society, our homeland, and will take care of the country. Or you choose foreign agents who will only carry out the orders of foreign countries.
But amid all, many voters say they want change.
These elections are very important for me, especially since our country is in the current state of affairs. Of course, I have voted for Europe because I want to live in Europe, not in Russia. So I voted for change.
Georgia had lost swathes of its territory to Russian-backed separatists in the 1990s and was defeated in 2008. Shalini Puri's report, DD India.
In Japan, new Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba and main opposition leader Yoshihiko Noda campaign ahead of a snap election that will take place on Sunday. Candidates made last-ditch appeals to voters on Saturday, with opinion polls suggesting the ruling coalition might fall short of a majority. A poll on Friday by Japanese media suggested that the Liberal Democratic Party and its coalition partner Kumito might struggle to get the 233 lower house seats needed for a majority. The current record is held by Naruhiko Higashikuni, who served for 54 days, 4 days more than British leader Liz Truss in 2022. Earlier, after a tough internal contest, former Defence Minister Ishiba became the premier and pledged to revitalize depressed rural regions. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and Polish President Andrzej Duda have agreed to push to finalize a new contract to export South Korean tanks to Poland by the end of the year. Yoon said the South Korean and Polish governments will actively lend support to seal a deal before the end of the year for South Korea's Hyundai Rotem to supply K2 tanks to Poland. He added both the nations will establish a new forum for defense dialogue and cooperate closely on security matters. Earlier in 2022, South Korea signed an estimated $22 billion framework agreement to export mechanized howitzers, tanks and fighter jets. The 56-member Commonwealth agreed that the time has come for discussions about the legacy of the abhorrent transatlantic slave trade in a landmark statement that raises the prospect of future reparations. The joint statement also made a reference to concern about the severe consequences of the climate crisis, including rising temperatures and sea levels. More than half of the Commonwealth's members are small nations, many of them low-lying islands at risk from rising sea levels caused by climate change. Representatives of the 56 countries in the group are attending the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
As a result, heads noting the calls for a discussion on reparatory justice with regard to the transatlantic slave trade, the trade in enslaved Africans and chattel enslavement, and recognizing the importance of this matter to members of the Commonwealth, the majority of which share common historical experiences in relation to this abhorrent trade, chattel enslavement, the debilitation and dispossession of indigenous people, indentureship, colonialism, blackbirding and their enduring effects, agreed that the time has come for a meaningful, truthful and respectful conversation towards forging a common future based on equity.
So with just a few days left for the U.S. presidential elections, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and presidential candidate of the Republican Party Donald Trump are ramping up their efforts to secure votes in 7 battleground states. DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh reports from Houston in Texas.
Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable.
Kamala Harris once again calling out Donald Trump for becoming increasingly deranged. She held her first joint campaign rally with Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen in Atlanta. Donald Trump has called her a threat to democracy.
She's a threat to democracy because she shouldn't even be the candidate.
The political narrative as sharply divided as the American society polarized.
As far as I'm concerned, there's only one issue, and it's to get rid of Donald Trump. I feel he is the most destructive force on this planet at this time. Giving him the nuclear codes would be the biggest mistake U.S. ever made.
She's not answered a single question. In fact, she runs from every question she's ever asked. So she'd be terrible. How could she stand up against Putin if she can't even stand up against a reporter that's on her side?
The key issue to me is ensuring that Donald Trump not take office. I'm extremely concerned about his fascist tendencies, and I think we have to do everything we can as a nation to uphold democracy and defeat him.
While American society may seem divided right from the middle this time around, most American states have traditionally voted on predicted lines. The terms red state and blue state refer to U.S. states whose voters vote predominantly for one party, the Republican Party in the red states and the Democratic Party in blue states, in presidential and other statewide elections. By contrast, states where the vote fluctuates between Democratic and Republican candidates are known as swing states or purple states. In these elections, there are 7 states that are swing or battleground states, which includes the states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. And understandably, both candidates are focusing their energies campaigning in these states, making a last lap bid to woo the undecided voter. But is it cutting ice with them?
What are they going to do for the people when they get into office? All the claims that they make, I want to make sure that they come through with the claims. You know, Trump says he can do X, Y, Z, and doesn't do nothing.
Well, I'm not too sure about what I'm going to decide, but everything's too expensive.
Then there is the issue that is America ready for a woman president, and a colored one at that?
If there's any time that a woman's going to take over the White House and represent us worldwide, it's now.
While issues like cost of living, economy, jobs, women's rights, abortion, etc. do matter to people, but it's often seen that on the voting day, most Americans cast their vote based on partisan loyalties. And that is why you see the states that have been red or blue continue to remain so. In such a scenario, when the race is so tight, it is really the undecided voter, especially the purple states, which could swing either way, that could decide who will sit in the Oval Office for the next 4 years. With cameraman Sanjay Jena, this is Amrit Pal Singh for DD India in Houston, Texas.
Still to come on DD India News Hour, a discussion on the deplorable situation of women from minority communities in Pakistan. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz visits the Indian state of Goa. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour with me, Munmun Bhattacharya. India has slammed Pakistan at the United Nations over deplorable condition of its women from minority communities. These women are victims of abduction, forced religious conversions and forced marriages. Here's a report that documents their despicable condition.
India slamming Pakistan for raising the Kashmir issue at the United Nations Security Council debate in New York, calling it a mischievous provocation based on their tested tactic of spreading misinformation. Exercising its right to reply during the UN Security Council debate, India put the spotlight on the deplorable condition of women from minority communities in Pakistan.
We are well aware that the condition of women belonging to minority communities, notably Hindus, Sikhs and Christians, in that country remains deplorable. An estimated 1,000 women of these minority communities, as per data of the Human Rights Commission of that particular country, are subject to abduction, forced religious conversions and forced marriages every year.
If we break down the number of religious communities in Pakistan, we see that according to the 2017 census, Muslims make up 96.2% of its population, whereas Hindus are just 1.6% and Christians too are just 1.59% of Pakistan's population. As per an April 2024 United Nations report, UN experts were alarmed by the lack of protection for minority girls from forced religious conversions and forced marriage in Pakistan. Explaining how girls are targeted in Pakistan, US-based Sindhi Foundation notes that girls are generally kidnapped by complicit acquaintance and relatives or men looking for brides. Majority of the girl victims are minors. 77% are younger than 18-year-old and around 18% are younger than 14 years. Minority groups have expressed concerns about the prosecution of Hindus and threats to their places of worship. In 2007, the only Hindu temple in Lahore was demolished to make way for a commercial building. A case that made headlines in Pakistan was that of Asia Bibi, a Pakistani Christian woman who spent years on death row after being convicted of blasphemy and now lives in Canada. The death sentence was quashed by the Supreme Court in 2018, triggering violent protests by religious hardliners. Authorities in Pakistan have been a mute spectator or at best ineffective in curbing this menace despite the severity of the issue. Efforts to criminalize forced conversions have been met with resistance from Islamic groups in Pakistan, so they are yet to materialize into concrete legislation. For instance, the Protection of Rights of Minorities Bill 2020, which talked about forced conversion, was rejected by the Standing Committee on Religious Affairs and Interfaith Harmony of Pakistan in September 2020. Such bill proposed measures such as setting an age limit of 18 years for conversion, ensuring due process and imposing jail terms for coercion in faith conversion. Minority groups have been facing other abuses and atrocities too, such as persecution and threats to their place of worship. In 2007, the only Hindu temple in Lahore was demolished to make way for a commercial building. So Pakistan would do well to introspect and course correct rather than point fingers at others. Bureau Report, DD India.
Joining us for perspective now on this is Dr. Shalini Chawla. She's an expert on Pakistan affairs and distinguished fellow with CAPS or Center for Air Power Studies. Such a pleasure to have you, Dr. Shalini, with us. Would you say that systems in Pakistan are under such a tight stranglehold of Islamist fundamentalists that women, especially from minority communities, are objectified and abused in the most heinous ways imaginable?
There is the problem about regarding suppression of minorities is not new in Pakistan. In fact, there is a whole culture of suppression. So you have to dive deeper into the whole issue rather than just going the statement has been made, but this is not something new. We had the UN Human Rights Committee report came out in October. In last year, there was a report which came out from UN, and in January last year, in fact, there was a press release where UN had actually urged action to Pakistan, saying that they need to take action against, taking care of the fact that there are these suppression taking care against the minority and forced marriages, etc. So there is a whole chain that you see of suppression in that country. So where are even the majority, where you have the Muslim population also is under deep suppression of the military, and then you have the suppression of the minorities there, which is a cultural issue there. And I won't go into the details, but it is not only the Islamist party's issue. It is the issue of it is the issue, the way the country has been governed, the way the country has been dealt with. The voices of the minorities have not been given the right place, and that's why the division of the countries happen. And it is, if you see, even now, it is not only about the religious minorities. See how the Baluchis are, treated there. How the other areas, you have seen, there have been also reports about the suppression of the Baluch there, enforced disappearances there. So that is the way, that you have seen from the beginning. We this whole thread of intolerance in the society. And if I would deep dive and say one sentence, the creation of the state on the basis of two-nation theory kind of becomes the bottom line for that intolerance. So the bottom line there in Pakistan is that intolerance is very deep in the society. So lack of tolerance of any other, and that's the basis of the creation of that state, right? And that is something which is not gone. And in fact, the instability within the country has now intensified those factions of intolerance. Those whole threads of intolerance have intensified because of the continued instability that you see in the country. So now, obviously, Pakistan can rake up these issues of Kashmir at the international forum because it suits their whole agenda, the strategic calculus. It suits them because it kind of allows them to get back their strategic relevance in some form. But the fact is that the country needs to look within and address these issues which have been grossly talked about, and even the Pakistanis are talking about it, and it's all over local reports. It's not only India is saying on the basis of the UN reports and whatever is coming out in the Pakistani local newspapers. So the issue has been there, and I don't see this settling down soon. Because the instability, the polarization in the country, the extremism which is seeping in the country, I don't see that settling down very soon. Because you know how the country is, the hybrid regime is there, people's voices they don't form, part of the regime there. So the instability won't settle down, and this factor is not going to settle down very soon there.
You're saying there are cultural murings and intolerance has been the basis of the creation of Pakistan under the two-nation theory, and instability is worsening the situation perhaps. But also, Dr. Shalini, courts in Pakistan validate forced marriages and religious conversions of girls from minority communities instead of questioning them. Why do you think there's no call for action from the judiciary in Pakistan? Is it again how things are structured, or do they simply go by the laws? Because even if laws are inadequate, for instance, in a democracy like India, there are courts that at times call for action, but we don't see that in Pakistan.
You don't see that's a fantastic question, but you don't see that institutional empowerment there to be able to bring that kind of change in Pakistan. You saw judiciary, asserting itself tremendously in the last, say, a year or so, and you saw the 26th Amendment bill. You also saw how the structural changes have been now initiated in Pakistan to bring back those powers of the judiciary. So there is a limit what the role that institutions can play there to be able to bring this long-term change which we are talking about in Pakistan. And obviously there is empowerment of these Islamist groups which have been traditionally used by the military and the political groups for their own strategic advantages. And there are multiple intertwined factors, I would see, which are there in Pakistan, which have led to this. And somewhere it kind of takes pride in establishing its identity on the basis of this. Some of the factions, I won't say the whole of country. But as far as your question goes in terms of institutions bringing in change, I think there is a limit where institutions can play. We have not seen any positive change being brought into the country through the institution. We know the issues in the country. We know how powerful there are the power lobbies are, the military and the Islamist forces also there. So I don't think they have that much of the power in terms of bring in that change. there are limitations to that, I would say.
So, Dr. Shalini, experts say that child early and forced marriage cannot be justified on religious grounds or cultural grounds, and under international law, consent is irrelevant when the victim is a child under the age of 18. With Pakistani authorities turning a blind eye or at best ineffective, is there really no hope in sight?
I mean, there are, as I said, these issues are extremely deep and long-term changes are required to do that. And I won't comment on the religious side of that. I mean, I don't have the authority to do that there. But as far as the changes are required, I don't see those changes in Pakistan. In fact, the recent bill which has come up, the 26th Amendment bill, which has actually now brought in a big change in terms of cutting down the powers of the judiciary. It doesn't give you so much hope in terms of the fact that the country can actually advance and change too much, to my mind. At least not right now. I can't say anything about the future. And even if you see the recent elections, how they were won, the most popular leader still remains behind the bar. So I don't see too many changes with this kind of the power dynamics that we have right now. Will the power dynamics change in Pakistan? Even for that, currently, I don't see the hope in terms. I think the power dynamics, the more unstable the country is, the power dynamics which are there will be strengthened. I don't see that changing. So till you have the real people's power reflecting in policy making, these changes don't come. And unfortunately, in Pakistan, that doesn't happen. We are seeing this hybrid regime for quite some time now, and we will see the continuation of that in the coming years, is my feeling.
So no hope for minorities, including girls from the minority communities in Pakistan?
I hope I'm wrong, and I hope there is hope. There are also positive steps. There are some reports which are suggesting that the work is being done. But if I, sitting here in India, on a broad level, if I see in terms of what is happening and what we saw in the elections, the kind of amendment bill that we see, the kind of polarization that we see, the kind of effort that we are seeing in terms of, effort which are bringing down the powers of the institutions and only giving supremacy to the military, where will the hope come from? The hope can only come when you have the true democracy, when you have the people's will reflecting there. So how will the hope really, I don't see those traces of hope there.
Absolutely. Also, any sort of socio-economic reforms have a long gestational period. So if you don't show the political will now, how can one think of a future which is brighter, maybe 20 years or 30 years down the line? Well, we'll leave it at that, Dr. Shalini. Thank you so much for joining us with your views.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who is visiting India, interacted with college students in the coastal Indian state of Goa on the last day of his official visit on Saturday. Scholz, who arrived in India on Thursday, attended an interactive session with students of Birla Institute of Technology and Science. He highlighted the future prospects of India-Germany partnership and said renewable energies, security and technology are key sectors of growth for both the nations. The German Chancellor visited a tech exhibition organized by students before talking with them in a brief session. German frigate Baden-Württemberg and the supply ship Frankfurt am Main made port call at Marmugao port in the southern Indian state of Goa on Saturday. They have been, in fact, carrying out defense policy circumnavigation of the world since May as part of the German mission in the Indo-Pacific region, IDP-24. The Consul General German in Mumbai, Ashim Fabik, received by H. Risch from German frigate Baden-Württemberg upon its arrival at Marmugao port. General Helge Risch of the German Navy expressed his pleasure in visiting India as part of the Indo-Pacific deployment and emphasized the importance of India as the largest democracy and a key partner in the region.
We are very, very happy to be here in India, because we consider India one of our, it's a the biggest democracy in the world, as one of our good partners in the region, and I think for the upcoming future, even more important partner in the region.
India's seventh anti-submarine warfare shallow water craft Abhay, built by Garden Reach shipbuilders and engineers for the Indian Navy, was launched at Larsen & Toubro at Kattupalli in Chennai. The vessel, 77.6 meters in length and equipped with advanced underwater sensors, will bolster India's anti-submarine capabilities. Launched by Mrs. Sandhya Pendharkar, president of the Navy Welfare and Wellness Association, Abhay exemplifies India's Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliant India mission with over 80% indigenous content, driving domestic defense production, employment and skill development in shipbuilding. Time for another breather on DD India News Hour. Coming up after that, SBI report finds income disparity declines 74.2% since FY14 in India. And New Zealand beat India by 113 runs to win the series 2-0.
Who will be the next president of United States of America?
Will Donald Trump make a dramatic comeback, or will Kamala Harris become America's first woman president?
It's a tight race to the White House.
The knives are out and the battle lines sharply drawn.
He's becoming increasingly unstable and unhinged.
She's a threat to democracy because she shouldn't even be the candidate.
I'm Amritpal Singh.
I'm Shubhendu Ghosh.
We travel across the United States
to decode the issues at the heart of this polarized election.
Watch this space only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour with me, Munmun Bhattacharya. India's President Draupadi Murmu is on a two-day visit to Chhattisgarh. President Murmu on Saturday attended the third convocation of Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay Memorial Health Science and Ayush University of Chhattisgarh.
Shashank Nahar, MCH Neurosurgery.
Earlier, President visited the Lord Jagannath Temple in Raipur, Chhattisgarh. She was accompanied by Governor Raman Deka and Chief Minister Vishnu Deosai, offered prayers for the country's well-being and prosperity at the renowned temple. Following her temple visit, Murmu attended convocation ceremonies at IIT Bhilai and Pandit Deen Dayal Memorial Health Science and Ayush University.
Chhattisgarh and IIT Bhilai.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has stated that countries from the global south have a high degree of trust and expectations from India. Addressing an interactive session with students at a university in Pune, the minister recalled that New Delhi delivered COVID-19 vaccines to many countries at the time India was still vaccinating its own people.
They have a high degree of trust and expectation in India, and with a reason. In much of the global south, the developing world, people do remember that during COVID, when the developed world was actually stockpiling vaccines, many of them got their first vaccines from India. And they got their vaccines from India when India was still vaccinating its own people. You know, I cannot overstate to you the emotional impact of this on the world.
There has been a cumulative 74.2% decline in income disparity coverage for those earning up to 5 lakh rupees every year between fiscal years 2013-14 and 2022-23 as per an SBI report on Friday in the Indian context. The report, titled How Tax Simplification Has Given a Necessary Fillip to ITR Filing, said that the share in income disparity has reduced from 31.8% in FY14 to 12.8% in FY21 for people with income of up to 3.5 lakh rupees per annum. It signifies a share of this bucket group has increased by a sharp 19% income in comparison to their population. The report also added that the lower income group, that earning less than 5.5 lakh rupees every year, has registered a positive growth rate for all years in the last decade, except one due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The report also said that the states such as Maharashtra, Delhi, Gujarat and Karnataka, which have been traditional leaders in income tax space, are nearing saturation in ITR filing, and their share in overall tax file base is decreasing continuously. Uttar Pradesh is the leader in increasing share in income tax file base, followed by Bihar, Andhra Pradesh, Punjab and Rajasthan. And let's now take a look at what Indian economy expert Shivamay Bhattacharjee has to say about the findings of the SBI report and its connection to tax simplification.
The SBI report essentially tells us that reforms in direct taxes are very useful. Why? Because the simpler the tax laws are, the easier the rules, the more do people want to file their tax returns and to pay the taxes. Now, this is something which is significant because over the last 14 years or so, the government has been able to continuously create a system where tax laws are becoming easier for people to comply with.
The Sardar Patel Memorial Lecture was held at Akashvani Bhavan in New Delhi, where ISRO Chairman Dr. S. Somnath inaugurated the event. While delivering the lecture, Somnath highlighted that a nation's strength lies not only in launching spacecraft, but in doing so from its own soil.
60s, we were launching small rockets to space while other nations were putting men on the moon. So you know the gap that existed between us and the other nations. And this gap that existed, we have bridged substantially over the last so many years, putting us as a leading spacefaring nation today, having ability to build our own rockets, build our own satellites and launch it from our own soil. It's not a mean achievement for a nation like India. And we have done, not only did so many launches, like hundreds of launches and almost hundreds of satellites that we have put in space, we not only did that, we also launched almost 400 plus satellites of other nations using our rockets from India, almost 34 countries. We did a lot of research activities in creating new technologies and innovations in space sector.
Prasar Bharati Chairman Navneet Sehgal honored Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's legacy, noting his role in shaping India's bureaucracy, now seen as the country's steel frame. Prasar Bharati CEO Gaurav Dwivedi and Akashvani Director General Dr. Pragya Paliwal Gaur were also in attendance.
On this particular day, on the birth anniversary of Sardar Patel, today we stand India. We are there, as a geographical union, because of effort and his vision of Sardar Patel. As a civil servant, I feel proud to be listening to and speaking about Sardar Patel, because he was the originator of the civil service in this country. Civil service, which is, called steel frame of India, all across the nation. It was his vision, it was his concept that the civil service in India started.
You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for all the sports action. India's Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports has cleared the participation of wrestlers at the World Championships. The tournament will be held in Tirana, capital of Albania, from the 28th of October to the 31st of October. The Indian contingent will leave for Tirana on Sunday. The 12-member Indian contingent is now set to compete at the championships. Earlier, the wrestlers and their parents met Sports Minister Mansukh Mandavia in New Delhi following uncertainty over their participation. Indian men's junior team clinched the bronze medal at the Sultan of Johor Cup as they beat New Zealand 3-2 in penalty shootout after the game ended in a 2-all stalemate. Dilraj Singh opened the scoring for India while Manmeet Singh doubled the lead in the 20th minute. India stayed in control of the game but could not score another goal. New Zealand took advantage of this and rallied in the final quarter with Owen Brown netting the first goal while Jonty Elmas scoring the equaliser. The game went into a tense shootout which was won by India 3-2 thanks to successful shots by Gurjot, Manmeet and Saurabh Anand and brilliant saves by keeper Bikramjit Singh. New Zealand scripted history as they defeated India by 113 runs in the second test on Saturday to clinch their first ever series win on the Indian soil. Michelle Santner took 6 wickets as the hosts were bowled out for 245 by the visitors in their chase of 359 on the third day of the match in Pune. Player of the match, Santner ended with a match haul of 13 wickets to set up New Zealand's 2-0 win in the 3-match series. Earlier, Kiwis won the first test in Bangalore. India's winning streak of 18 test series at home since 2012 has ended. The third and final test will begin in Mumbai on the 1st of November. That's all in this edition of DD India News Hour, but do share your thoughts with us on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. This is Minman Bhattacharya from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.